uh, 3, 2, 1. Alright, here we go. Mina! Yokozo! Alright, class, settle down and let me tell you a story. I literally just woke up from a nightmare. Just in time to find out that I am late for this. There goes my mental health, according to my doctor. One of the she says like there's a probability that one of the reasons why my overall health is down is because of my anxiety. My anxiety. I'm gonna say it like I'm from California or something. Like, can you guys even hear me? Is it everything? Everything is on. So I don't know. It's like I'm in terms of my health, I'm like in a chicken or the egg situation. My it's like, my mental health is bad because my overall physical health is bad, or my physical health is bad but because my mental health is bad. So chicken or the egg situation. But the thing is, it like feels so weird. Because you know what? It's like I remember, the doctor showing me my stuff, and you know what? Here's the thing, right? For your age and everything, you're doing quite well in the sense that your genetics just screwed you. It's like everything. I was even a vegetarian at one point. I've been an athlete my entire life. But everything here points to your genetics in the sense that it's not it's not overall your fault. It's just, aging. It's just like, aging and aging and your genetics. That's it. So I guess the engine has to fail sometime. That's why we're here. And oh yeah, so anyways, we have in terms of content, we're sort of backed up in a sense that last weekend we were supposed to have a ton of stuff. We had a ton of stuff to get through, but for some reason, YouTube decided to crack down on AI, and the thing is, the channel was placed under scrutiny in a sense that I was sent an email that says that you no longer have any access to your regular stuff or to your advanced features because you don't have history. And it's like, what do you mean by history? You don't have the history. I don't know. I've been doing this for like 3 years now and everything. And for some reason, YouTube just told me I don't have sufficient history to like, have access to features. Because you know what? They already have my number. They already have, whatchamacallit? They already have my number. They already have and my other stuff. But no, they just had to like, get everything, including my ID, because I remember that Iron Mouse situation that she was forced to let go of her channel. She was about to let it go because someone filed a report on her, a third party report on her, so she needed to prove through third parties that she was a real person and everything, and which just wasn't possible because I remember that issue is that all the hate that she got after the whole Kai Cenat thing. I mean, if she let her, her whatchamacallit, if she let her identity go, or if she, reveals her identity to a third party, it would only be a matter of time before, there's a leak and before she gets swatted. So, ah, fucking hell. I guess, it's good that YouTube's cracking down on AI, but you know what? Screw them! I've been doing this for 3 years. I have like 3 years worth of content, and they said I don't have sufficient history. So, anyways, before I go off and just, rant about all this stuff, again, you guys, like it if you do and subscribe so we can keep this going. And here we go. Hold on. There we go. The Asian boss. The Philippines gun paradox explained. It's like one of the reasons I wanted to check this video out is that Philippines on its own has its own gun culture in a sense that that is I realized that could relatively be like strange to our fellow Asians, or to some people whose countries, where guns don't exactly exist, or where their guns are completely restricted, where they're not. So I wanted, number one, I wanted to show I wanted to get this video so I could, so we could like watch the point of view of an outsider who didn't, grow up around guns. And one of the reason for that is I just came off from a gun show, because apparently in the present team at work, they found out, actually, my teammates found out that I am like the only person in the entire office that has actual experience and certify and actual certification in terms of guns. And the thing is, I honestly wouldn't call so yeah, here's some pictures and everything, but the thing is, um I honestly even wouldn't consider this a paradox. Here's the thing, right? We're going in blind. I honestly don't know what's in this videos, but I wouldn't consider that this is a paradox, in a sense that I believe, as a person that has lived in this island his entire life, and I've seen other countries and everything. I always believe that firearms or guns were a necessity for us here in our little island, for the simple reason that we're at number one, we're a third world country, and number three, um if you go to some parts of the country, you will find out, especially because Philippines is known for its tourist destination, its tourist trap. The government is in control. Everything's going according to plan, except there will be places, and you will find out, if you travel long enough, there are restrictions, or there are places here where the government isn't completely in control. Like, you will be surprised that that's why the US State Department has travel warnings that you shouldn't travel to this particular area. I'm not really sure, you guys can check it out online. But the thing is, there are warnings in several parts of the country where you're not supposed to travel through. For the simple reason that it's simply too dangerous for outsiders, and you'll be surprised that because we have, because here's the thing, right? Back in the previous administration, there was this joke that we were completely messed up, in a sense that if you go north of the country, you have communist rebels. If you go south of the country, you have Islamic rebels, and if you go in the center, we have a drug war. So yeah, pick your poison. That's why camping isn't really a big of a thing here, because most of the places where there are wilderness, you have what you call there's a chance that you'd get accosted by communist rebels. I just said a very polite term, accosted. We have another term for that here. I because I remember there's a school in one of our state universities in UP Baguio. Back in the early 2K, students were actually literally warned that if you're going to travel from the metro, from the capital to UP Baguio, which is north of the country, do not wear school merchandise like shirts, shorts, or ID lanyards that would identify you as a student, because communist rebels, the New People's Army, um basically hold checkpoints and try to recruit students. That's how they would identify students. And from south of the country, in some parts of the country, you would be surprised that there are non-government entities, armed groups, literally holding checkpoints. That what, all is well in the capital. We have restrictions when it comes to firearms, but the thing is, the moment you go outside the capital, it's a completely different story. Right, the moment you go outside the tourist destinations, it's going to be a completely different story. I mean, we, apart from the rebels, we have cults and bandits, and we have a very extensive anti-piracy law. And when I say anti-piracy law, we're not talking about downloading movies. We are talking about guys that actually try to climb in on boats. It was actually quite a problem. So in other words, living here in the third world, living here in the third world, it has been, I don't think it's a paradox, it's more of a necessity. having firearms is more of a necessity because, like, for example, in the US, people would be the general consensus is that people would laugh that the people would form up militias for what, militias against what, there's nothing there, right? Militias against the only reason, the only groups would be going up against would be the actual government. But here the government isn't in control. We have cults, we have armed groups, we have rebels running around the countryside. And I remember just this morning actually, I was talking to a friend and we were sort of mapping out that for the past few like for the past 3 to 4 almost we never had like a peaceful decade, in a sense that there's always armed conflict popping off every decade, like where people actually get unalive, where people get unalived, or at least there's a chance of being unalived. Because here's the thing, right? 2017 there was the Marawi siege, 2013 there was the Zambo siege. Beneath that, like every decade, we so for 2009 2010 there was the 2001 to 2010 there was the Oakwood Mutiny. Before that there was the all-out war under the Estrada. No, Estrada administration was until 2001 and 1998. 1997 was the mark. Anyways, the thing is, we haven't had like a peaceful decade. And we were mapping it out in a sense that the years 2000 it's like every 5 years something happens. Armed conflicts, it's literally just blows up here in the country. And here's the thing, right? There was the last 5 decades from 2001 to 2005, nothing happened, but we believe it's because of the pandemic. That's why that's why it didn't go. That's why nothing went down. But now from 2026 to 2030, we believe we're overdue for another bloody conflict. Either in the south of the south of the country or here in the capital. So yeah, good luck everyone. Anyways, you guys, I'm sorry. I'm just going off because that's one of the downsides of living in a flashpoint country where literally war could go off at any moment. Like the government isn't in complete control. We live in the capital, but the thing is, there are other forces other than the government. And you know what? They simply couldn't. They simply have. They're simply they simply don't have what it takes to just stop them or something. So again, you guys, like it if you do, and subscribe. Asian Boss knows we need it. Philippine Gun Paradox explained. I mean, let's see what he has to say about it.
What if I told you there's a multi-billion-dollar industry in the Philippines that's hiding in plain sight? And when I say plain sight, I mean it's completely out in the open, like everywhere, at every shopping mall entrance, outside the bank, in your hotel lobby. But here's the thing, no local would even notice it. Of course, I'm talking about
guns.
Lots of guns.
Lots of guns.
And if you're visiting the Philippines for the first time and you're not from, say, America, it can be a pretty awkward experience at first because you don't know how you're supposed to.
A lot of people, especially even some of our Southeast Asian brethren, it gets a bit awkward in the sense that they're not really used to seeing guns being carried around the streets. So yeah.
React when you walk past a Filipino guard in uniform literally holding a shotgun. Meanwhile, a local mom and her little girl stroll past the same guy without so much as a glance, chatting away about their day. Pretty interesting contrast. And if you have
It is. We have a very robust private security industry here in the Philippines. Apart from private security and apart from our private security industries, and we're literally talking about quote unquote mercenaries, because what else do you call people to guard establishment other than mercenaries? There's security guards, and we have those operating north and south of the country where there's where there's constant armed conflict. And apart from that, actually, US and the Philippines are like the only two countries in the world where bounty hunting is completely legal. I believe we did a video about this like years ago. But anyways, so if you wanna, if you're not from the if you don't live in the U.S. and if you're somewhere here, this is where you could, all your dog the bounty hunt. You could, like, exercise your dog the bounty hunter fantasies here in the Philippines. But then again, you will be operating in places where the government isn't really in control. And you will be dealing with checkpoints not held by government forces.
Happen to walk by an armored car making a cash delivery, you'll see guards with rifles.
Those are
because
cops.
Philippine law allows security agencies to carry high-powered firearms when they're escorting money or valuable assets. It's like you're surrounded.
I remember one time when we were in UP Diliman, there was an armored car robbery, and we literally heard the shots, bang, 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 and then, what was that? People, popping off fireworks and everything, because we were, like, in the other side of the university, because UP Baguio is where you're, in danger of being kidnapped by, communist rebels, whereas in UP Diliman, there's, like, a high chance of crime. It's in Quezon City, one of the highest, cities where one of the highest crime rates, not only in Asia, if I'm not mistaken, in the entirety of Asia. I remember that day there was, like, an armored car robbery, bang, 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 and we saw it on the news that night. Oh my gosh, we were just like, we were there today and we heard the shots. It was all over the news that, like, several guards got killed and everything. Should really stop saying got killed. Like, they got unalived and everything.
Surrounded by armed private security everywhere.
There we go.
Then it dawns on you. The Philippines is one of the least gun-restricted countries in Asia. There are roughly 4 million guns in circulation, with a huge chunk of those guns being illegal, as in unregistered, stolen, or otherwise unaccounted for. Right now, Philippine civilians...
I wouldn't call it restricted because I believe, the government does its best, because, the amount of hoops that I have to jump through for my, for the ones that I own, the amount of hoops that I have to jump through, I wouldn't call it, least restricted. It just so happens that it exists, alright? There's trouble every decade. Stuff goes down. And the thing is, you know what? An armed society is a polite society, as far as we can tell.
Outcome their own government by about 7-1. Let's not even compare that to the United States, okay? Where there are somewhere around 393 million guns, based on the most widely cited estimate. There are literally more guns than people in the United States. Roughly 120 guns for every 100 Americans. Nice. No other nation on Earth is
only like 7-1.
Close. But here's a fun fact. On a per capita basis, Thailand actually has more guns than the Philippines.
Really?
Way more. Thailand sits at around 15 firearms for every 100 people. That's surprising, right? Because if you've ever been to Bangkok...
So, how come the Philippines is on this video, not Thailand?
Guns are like the last thing you would expect to see in public. In Thailand, the guns are mostly locked in drawers and safes at home. Nobody carries them around. So you'll be forgiven for thinking that, at least from the optics, the Philippines is the most publicly armed country in Asia.
Really?
Because it probably is. Turns out a big reason for this is a growing private security industry.
We have like we have a thriving private security industry here in the country
that employs somewhere between 500,000 and 600,000 security guards.
Because I know that for a fact, because when I have to renew my registration and my license, I have to like show up at like Camp Crame, that's like the main police headquarters here in the country. I have to show up there, and we have to line up, and we see them, armed security guards, basically renewing or applying for their LESPS or LESPs, license to exercise security profession. So I guess that's one way they can control them or something.
And they're legally allowed to carry those guns in public as long as they're in uniform and on duty. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because in June 2026, in Tacloban, a city on the island of Leyte in the central Philippines, 2 teenagers walked into their high school with guns and shot 3 of their classmates.
This is like a new thing, by the way. This is like, you'd expect that, just like in the US, there would be like school shootings, but I guess one of the reasons why he made, and I sort of skedaddled that we had our very own. I don't think this is the first time because we've had assassinations. And we've had school shootings before in the Philippines, but I remember it was in the State University of Mindanao. There was this whatchamacallit politician, this foreign politician who came in, and he was assassinated by one of the inside the school. But this one was, I'm not really sure if the one who assassinated them was a student, or if it but basically someone got assassinated inside the university, a politician or some sort of a celebrity got assassinated inside the university. But this is the first time where there was an actual US style type of school shooting here in the Philippines. This is like the first time. So yeah, I sort of skedaddled over that, or forgot over this little fact. I guess that's why he made this video.
Dead and injured at least 20 people. The
Yep.
shooters were 14 and 15 years old. It was one of the first mass school shootings of its kind in the country's modern history. Yes, the Philippines does have one of the highest firearm homicide rates in Southeast Asia.
Yep.
But this kind of random, indiscriminate school shooting there is so rare that the news
Yes, it
stopped
is.
the entire nation cold. The president ordered every school in the country to tighten security. The Senate opened an investigation. So what I want us to explore together is this.
We had a very whatchamacallit, we had a very quote unquote the public considered it a very clownish response to this particular shooting, because we were so surprised that that the government of course tried to protect certain personalities, specifically the police themselves, in a sense that instead of actually calling in, because how it went, or how it happened, is that had a police officer. The school shooter had a police officer for an aunt, and that's where he got the gun. And the thing is, instead of calling in the aunt or any of the police, they literally called this video game developer from Germany in first for this in that Senate investigation. It was a very clownish response, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, these boomer politicians still blaming video games for turning out violent kids." And that particular issue, sadly, is just being edged out of the news cycle right now, because for a lot it makes the police look bad, because the gun came from a police officer and everything, a somewhat high ranking one, I'm not mistaken. But anyways, people clowned on the government response that again, the boomers decided to blame video games for it. That they even called the Gore Box or something. Was it the name of that particular game? Gore Box is very violent. This violent adjacent game to that particular game. So we were just laughing. Boomers blaming video games again.
How does a country with this many guns almost never produce the kind of mass shooting that almost feels routine in the US? What role has the private security industry played in that, if any? And after what happened in Tacloban, is that line
no role whatsoever
starting to break? Before we get into it, the Philippines is exactly the kind of topic where local context gets lost. Most of what reaches Western audiences comes secondhand, and the Filipino press actually covering this story never makes it into your feed. That's why we partnered with Ground News, which solves a problem I've been personally wanting to address for years. Ground News is not a news outlet. It's a news comparison app and website that gives me transparency when I'm sifting through data and reports on each topic we cover on our channel. It lets you access worldwide sources your algorithm probably isn't surfacing. For example, search Philippines mass shooting on Ground News and you'll see coverage around the latest school shooting in the Philippines that rocked the nation. You get multiple headlines, a summary, and the source breakdown. In this case, I was surprised to find that many outlets covering the story leaned noticeably left, because they were the ones calling for tightening school security. Given the political nature of the story, you can also see factuality ratings and...
Hold on. Really? Why would they? The left would lean for tighter security. But we have communist rebels exist here in the Philippines. We have a very robust activist or militant it's not an industry, but being an activist or the militant movement here in the Philippines is actually quite it's quite a thing, right? So hold on. So if you think about it, it's a bit ironic that it would be the left, because here in the country it's the left that's actually out there on the streets being doing especially they're like the most active in terms of militant movement. So I find it interesting. Hold on, I have to like check on my phone since some reason I can't live without my presence or something. Hold up. Oh yeah, there we go. So yeah, I like find this quite ironic in a sense that the left is calling for what you call it, for tighter firearms restrictions, and but despite the fact that they're the most militant and they're the most active when it comes to militant movements here in the Philippines. So anyways,
ownership details for each source so you know how reliable the coverage is. There's also the blind spot feed, showing stories ignored by either side of the political spectrum. This is the kind of tool I wished more people used before forming opinions. So if you're someone who wants to stay informed without being manipulated by algorithms, subscribe to Ground News and get 40% off the Vantage plan by scanning the QR code, going to ground.news/boss, or clicking the link in the description below. All right, let's get back to the deep dive.
If you think about it, I was just so busy talking about my own experiences that I wonder why he made this video, and I realized, oh yeah, spotlights on the Philippines right now because of the recent school shooting. Like for the first time, I mean, because the biggest thing right now, if you check U.S. news, is the cowboy or the one who stopped this school shoot. There's been another shooting, not a school shooting one, but there's this cowboy. There's this guy in jorts and like a cowboy hat that stopped a mass shooter or something. Because I kept talking about my own experience with firearms and and the political ramification of firearms here in the Philippines, and I forgot that there was a school shooting. Interesting. I don't think we were armed by accident. We were armed by design. Because historically speaking, during the Japanese siege of Manila, the American military leadership basically opened Manila as whatchamacallit, declared Manila as an open city, so Japanese forces wouldn't obliterate the city and would keep the civilian casualties to a minimum. And there was reports back then that the mayor of Manila, whose name escapes me, I need to brush up on my history. Like he literally begged, like what? If you will not defend us, as stated by, if you will not defend us, we will defend ourselves. So leave us your arms. Instead, open up your armories and give it to us. But the military leadership in the country by that, okay. If we leave you our guns, what happens afterwards? After the war is over, they were sure that we will turn our guns against our colonial overlords after we fight off the Japanese forces or something. So yeah.
So right off the bat, before we even get to gun violence and mass shootings, we first need to understand where all these guns in the Philippines came from. What I was personally curious about was, when did guns first start entering the hands of ordinary Filipinos in significant numbers? From what we found, the answer is 1896.
Really? In terms of in a modern setting, I would have stated like during the martial law back in the 80s. Because during back then, the dictator Marcos, what he did was literally the father of our our current president. Like he provided the self-reliance initiative and something, and he even made like several administrative decisions that there are some parts or sectors of the government would be armed or something. But anyways,
up until then, The Philippines had been a Spanish colony for 333 years. And if you're an ordinary
333 under Spain, 48 under the US. After 48 years as a colony, as a US colony under Manifest Destiny, we became we were considered to be a protectorate in a sense that we didn't we that we almost just like Puerto Rico, we were almost like one of the stars under the American flag. And it was only I think 1958 or 1953 where we were a commonwealth, right? We were a commonwealth protectorate under the US after our quote unquote colonial status was revoked, in a sense that we were no longer just a colony. And we acted as a commonwealth like after the war, 1958. We finally had our own civil 1958, 1953, we had our civil code. And in 1991, that is like the time or the decade when US military bases were like, pulled out of the Philippines. So yeah.
Filipino, you could see guns around you, but probably could not get your hands on one because guns belonged only to Spanish officials, Spanish soldiers, and a small number of wealthy Filipinos the colonial government happened to trust. Which makes sense. If you're running a colony, why would you arm the people you're colonizing, right? But in August of 1896, Filipinos finally rose up.
Just like in any colonial action, and in the immortal words of New York Mayor, 19th century New York Mayor Tammany, you could always arm the one half of the poor to kill the other half. So basically, Philippines back then was like a bunch of warring tribes. So these explorers or would be colonizers, what they would do is they'd make friends with one set of tribal group in order to attack the other set of colonial groups, just like the French and Indian War. One group of Native Americans would side with the French and another group of Native Americans would side with the Americans. Just like the Western, just like the U.S. Western expansion when they quote unquote conquer the West, they had American tribesmen fighting for them, acting as trackers and guides.
Up against Spain. It started with a secret society named the Katipunan, which roughly translates to the Supreme and Venerable Association of the Sons of the People.
This guy, by the way, this actor, doing quite poorly in the Senate right now, because people voted for him. He's a senator right now, and yeah, currently considered to be a laughing stock because, well, I guess running for office, winning, and then actually doing the job is actually quite different from winning. Let's remember that that an election is a popularity contest, and well, popular guys, especially actors, have a very have a decent chance of winning here in the Philippines.
It was mostly made up of farmers and clerks, regular Filipinos. And when Spanish authorities found out this secret society existed, they came for its members. That's when the Filipinos decided to go to war. Except they went to war with farm tools, bamboo spears, bolo knives, which are heavy machete-style blades you use to cut sugarcane and clear brush.
I mean, if you guys noticed, almost all melee weapons and even bows and arrows are quote unquote farming implements first, from bill hooks, even swords, bill hooks, flails, hammers, maces. They were all derived from farming implements.
Meanwhile, Spanish soldiers were armed with Mauser and Remington rifles. So Filipinos literally brought knives to a gunfight, which was not a fair fight at all. So they fought the only way they could. They took guns off the bodies of Spanish soldiers they had managed to kill. And some Filipinos serving inside the Spanish colonial army defected and walked out with their rifles. Slowly, the rebels started arming themselves, and what began as a secret society turned into something closer to a real fighting force. Historians call it the Philippine Revolutionary Army. They were winning battles here and there.
I remember my dad had this story my dad had a story about his older brother. Because he was some sort of about his older brother, about my uncle. He was some sort of a local leader in their hometown in the countryside. And during the martial law back in the 80s, when they declared martial law, when they declared martial law, and his quote unquote followers, or local the local people, what are we going to do about our guns? Because they still owned guns, or the people in their town still had guns all the way from World War II. And they had a big fight. My uncle and my grandpa had a big fight, because my uncle said, you know what, hide them, bury them. And my grandfather said, no, surrender them, because you know what, if these people, we will be held as rebels, we will be hanged as communist rebels if the government finds out, or if someone snitches that we have a stash of guns somewhere. So yeah, my dad used to talk about it, because my grandpa had to surrender his 45 and his Garand. And of course, the government being the government back then, he never got it back after martial law was lifted, because despite the fact that there was no licensing law, the guys who surrendered their firearms back then never got it back. Back in the 70s. So yeah, no, in the 80s.
But it still wasn't enough to challenge the entire Spanish colonial army,
No,
who gradually
they sold us off to the Americans for was it 20,000? I can't remember, for the equivalent of 20,000 pesos, which is 20 or 48,000 or something. But I can't remember the exact number. But we were sold off to the U.S.
by the end of 1897. But here, the Spanish made a fatal mistake. They tried to buy the entire revolution off. In December of 1897, they offered the rebels 800,000 Mexican silver dollars, which was the currency of trade across Asia back then.
There we go.
That's roughly $15 million in today's money. And the deal was structured like a gun buyback almost. Their leader, a young general named Emilio Aguinaldo, would get the first 400,000 if he and his top officers left the country. Then the rest of the payments would follow once the revolution.
So corruption is still a thing even back then, because he did leave the country. He was exiled to Hong Kong or something. Story is he tried to get back by using the money to buy guns and everything and come back, but he got scammed by a guy. He lost most of that money or something, because he scammed the guy. He got scammed he tried to buy guns and then come back to the Philippines and restart the revolution, but he got scammed out of the money. He wanted to buy arms and ammunition and come back with the Philippines with arms and ammunition, but the thing is, he got scammed. And World War II came and everything. We were still alive back then, and he even tried to run for the presidency. But you know what? That was it. That was the end of his career. Because even then, his leadership is questionable. There were if you guys Google the thing between Emilio Aguinaldo and whatchamacallit, from Emilio Aguinaldo, he had a very sordid political history that of killing political rivals. So yeah, even our politicians back then weren't clean.
Revolutionaries had surrendered their weapons. Those were the conditions. So you know what Aguinaldo did? He said, fine, you pay me and I'll leave the country.
There we
he
go.
Took the first installment of 400,000 Mexican silver dollars, roughly $7.5 million today, sailed to Hong Kong, deposited it in a bank there, and used it to buy more guns and ammunitions to come back and keep.
If I'm not mistaken, he got scammed.
Fighting. And when that shipment finally reached the Philippines,
really?
It carried exactly 1999 rifles and 200,000 rounds of ammunition. Those numbers are from an official Philippine government source. So in effect,
Really? All right. Because I remember it's or was it only, I honestly can't remember. This is grade school history. I remember him getting scammed out of that money or something.
Filipinos armed themselves
with
Spain's
I could be thinking of a completely different story.
Own money. And that's how guns really entered ordinary Filipino hands for the first time. Through a war. To be clear, the Philippine Revolutionary Army did not defeat the Spanish.
No,
the Americans
we got sold
did.
out.
In 1989, the American Navy destroyed the Spanish fleet in Manila Bay. And just like that, 333 years of Spanish rule were over. And the Americans didn't show up by accident. Before the battle, US officials had already been in contact with the Revolutionary Army's leader, Aguinaldo, who was still in exile in Hong Kong. After the Spanish fleet went down, an American warship carried him home. The US admiral welcomed him aboard his flagship with full military honors. So Filipinos thought they had won. They thought they were finally free.
No, there was a
In June
battle.
1898, they even declared their own independence. And for a few months, it genuinely looked like they had. Except they were still not free. That December, Spain and the United States sat down in Paris and signed a treaty. Spain handed over the Philippines, and America paid $20 million for it.
20 million, not 20,000.
Filipino.
I'm sorry, $20 million. 20,000 is like the price of our presidential palace, Malacanang Palace, when it was, built back then.
Was at the table. So the Filipinos turned around and fought the Americans instead. That war lasted 3 years. Over 4,000 Americans died. More than 20,000 Filipino fighters died. And as many as 200,000 Filipino civilians died from violence, famine, and disease. In the end, the Filipinos lost. And from 1898, the United States would rule the Philippines for the next 48 years.
There we go, 48
until 1946. It's what the Americans did during this period that's worth looking into, because when it came to guns, they did the exact opposite of the Spanish. They had just spent 3 years fighting an armed population. The obvious move would have been to confiscate every gun in the country. Instead, in 1907, the American colonial government passed Act number 1780. And here's what it did. Anyone who wanted to sell guns could apply to the Governor General for a dealer's license.
Nice.
If the application was approved, the dealer had to pay a licensing fee and put up a bond. The guns themselves could then be shipped in from overseas through licensed importers, cleared through customs, and personally approved for import by the American.
What? Manifest destiny, baby! They were making... They needed to make money. Local economy flourished.
American Governor General. We couldn't actually verify exactly which overseas markets these guns were coming from, but the point is, any Filipino who wanted to own
What? War is profitable.
one for self-defense, hunting, or any other lawful purpose could apply for a license as well.
This is honestly quite ironic in the sense that during the colonial period from 1948 to 1946, during our Commonwealth era, they did everything to basically make us pacifist in the sense that there's a reason why our national hero is is Jose Rizal, basically a guy, a Gandhi-like figure in a sense that, he tried to start a revolution through his writings instead of, through sheer violence. Like the distinction between Malcolm X and, Martin Luther King.
What they had to do was put down a cash deposit for each gun you bought. Whatever their intentions, the Americans pretty much built a regulated gun market in the Philippines. Licensed dealers at one end, licensed Filipino buyers at the other, and a government office in the middle writing it all down. It's important to point out here that this did not give Filipinos some automatic rights like the Second Amendment.
No.
Rather, this was still a privilege granted by the colonial government. And the Governor General could
even now, it's not even considered, the Supreme Court, have provided a declaration that it's still a privilege. It doesn't even fall under property rights here in the Philippines. Like, you couldn't even consider that guns don't fall under property rights because there have been several pro gun groups lobbying for a freer restriction, I guess, for like a better gun ownership, I guess. And yeah, they tried to lobby, but the Supreme Court, and one of the things they did was they tried to file a case with the Supreme Court that guns are fall part under private property ownership. But the thing is here, the Supreme Court they said no. It's owning guns is a privilege. It's not part of private. You can't treat it like any other private property like cars and houses or something.
An application or revoke a license at any time. Anyway, by the end of 1915, barely 8 years after the law was passed, the American colonial government had already licensed roughly 7,500 firearms in the Philippines. That was the beginning of what would eventually become one of the least gun-restricted countries in Asia, through a law written by Americans. This is when the legal gun business started taking root too. One gun store that opened in Manila in 1905 eventually became Armscore, which today says it's the world's biggest producer of the 1911 pistol.
It's not that impressive. You know why? The office is located. The office is located right beside Camp Aguinaldo, and the reason why they had such a close-up of their main office is because their office isn't that impressive. In a sense, it's like what, a 2 or 3 story building. So that's why they don't show like the entire picture of their office building, because it's not that impressive. Right? Because Camp Aguinaldo and Camp Crame, the main police headquarters and the main Philippine Armed Forces headquarters, like literally sit beside each other. Like you can literally find them sitting in the same intersection. And the thing is, the reason for that is that the Philippine National Police was derived from the Philippine Army. They were called the Philippine Constabulary back then. Back then the police was under the military, and they were called the Philippine Constabulary. So what they did was they simply just divided the military camps or something. But the thing is, the reason why hold on, where was that? Why they could only show the Squires Bingham or Armscore HQ, they only show the signboard and they don't show the entire building, is because it's not impressive. It's like you might even say that it's been the whole building looks neglected. So yeah.
The handgun most
I was just there last Sunday. I just like literally passed by the building this Sunday.
Americans know as the 45. In the US, their most popular thing right now is the 9mm design 1911. Sell it under the brand name Rock Island Armory.
Rock Island.
Sounds American, but it's Filipino.
Yes, it is.
Which is ironic because the Americans invented that gun in the first place to shoot Filipinos with. But while all the legal
John Moses Brining, hallowed be thy name,
market stuff was going on in Manila, do you know what was happening about 350 miles south in a...
Alright, the reason one of the biggest manufacturers of unrestricted firearms is in Mindanao, side of the country. That's why the term here is Gawang Danao. Basically, the gun was made in Mindanao, because I remember one of our neighbors when I was a kid, my dad, they would literally shoot guns in the back of the house, like, in the backyard. They would shoot guns in the backyard, and one of our neighbors was a police officer. He's retired. He was a former, I wonder if he's still alive. I should really check on him. He retired he was a police general. He showed up and he was like, what's this? What do you have? He showed up with a gun. Imagine like a pistol. And I don't know how it was possible. It was a 1911 design pistol, but the thing is, it loaded 5.56 rounds for some reason. I don't know how it worked. I can't remember. I was a kid, but my dad told me about it. Like, you know what? The one time that guy showed up with the 1911 design that could fire 5.56 for some reason. I don't know if it worked or if they fired it, but apparently those exist. So that's why here we have the term Gawang Danao, because it was made in Mindanao. Gawa means made or made. So Gawang Danao is basically a term for guns that was manufactured in Mindanao. So in backyard industries, they literally make guns in backyards here, and we shoot guns in backyards here. So anyways, if you search it up YouTube, you will find that there's like a cottage industry for guns here in the Philippines.
Coastal town in Cebu,
Danao.
Illegal gun market. Filipinos there were building their own guns by hand, from scrap metal and angle iron and whatever they could pull out of a junkyard. It actually started around 1905, right in the middle of the American takeover.
What? John Moses Browning. That's how, like, that was one of the myths about John Moses Browning. Like, his parents, like, left him in the backyard. Like, his parents owned, like, a scrapyard or something. Or I don't know, machine shop or something, and then they just left him there, and then big surprise. So like one day, he'd let like his parents would let him play around their machine shop or their scrapyard, and they were so surprised. Like one day he came out with a gun.
When gunsmiths in the hills were supplying Filipino rebels who were still fighting.
Yeah,
and they never.
And guess what? Those gunsmiths never stopped making guns.
Or stopped. At one point, Danao had somewhere around 6,000 illegal gun makers by its own city government's estimate. And whenever Philippine police sees an illegal gun inside the country, the odds are overwhelming that it came out of a backyard like that one. So the Philippines ended up with 2 gun pipelines.
I remember talking to this agent. We were just like in line. I was renewing my stuff, and he said, they have this American brand called the Bushmaster, and the term is Binushmaster. So basically, he's in contact with some of these guys where they would make replicas of Colts and other American-made guns or American brands. So the Bushmaster, we have what we call the Binushmaster. So it's basically a cross between Taglish Filipino Tagalog slang of making an imitation of something like Versace or something, for like if you're knockoff of Versace brand or something. Here we have the Binushmaster. It's quite something.
In the same decade. One legal, properly imported and licensed, expensive, and written down in a ledger in Manila. One illegal, hand-built, cheap, and completely invisible. And both pipelines were quietly putting more and more guns into the country.
They never stopped.
Then
see the guy put that quote unquote those are called good morning. I have no idea, but it's a Chinese product, the good morning towels. Bimpos, we call them bimpos here, those towels. That guy with the towel on his face, dude, I am pretty sure he has cops for relatives, or he's in, or he has friends in the local government. Like that, of course, it's an international documentary, so he wouldn't be recognized by the national government. But if you just go to his hometown, like everyone in town knows him, and he probably has relatives in the local police force or in the local government.
World War II blew the whole thing wide open. On December 8th, 1941, 10 hours after Pearl Harbor, Japan invaded the Philippines, which was still an American colony. Why? Because the Philippines sat right in the middle of the Pacific Empire Japan wanted to build. And the Americans lost badly. Within months, U.S. and Filipino forces were overrun, and the American commander, General Douglas MacArthur, was ordered to flee to Australia. On his way out, he made a famous promise, "I shall return." The Japanese would occupy the Philippines for the next 3 years. But they never fully controlled it.
But then again, he left.
Filipinos fought back throughout the occupation from the mountains and jungles with whatever weapons.
From my dad's side, I heard stories that, of course, from my mom's side, my grandpa fought for the American forces. That's why he had my mom's family was a bit financially well off in a sense that her dad fought for the American side. That's why he had he received US dollar pensions. Whereas my grandfather, whereas on my dad's side, they weren't that, they struggled financially because, well, he fought in the same war, but the thing is, he was a guerrilla. He fought under guerrilla forces, because the thing is, the problem was he was on my dad's side. So basically, mom was well off. He was even on my mom's side. They even ran for the mayoralty. My mom's family from the mom's side is a bit well off, whereas on my dad's side, they did okay, but they weren't as financially well off. My grandfather wasn't seconded or wasn't tied to the American forces because he fought under the guerrilla units. the thing about it is that the story was because I never met my grandfather from my mom's side because he passed away before I was born. Whereas so I only knew my grandfather for my dad's side. He was like a second year engineering student from our own version of the MIT, Mapua Institute of Technology, because the guys who founded the Mapua Institute of Technology studied from Michigan Institute of Technology, so MIT and everything. So the thing is, when the war broke out, when Japan declared war, when the Japanese reports of invasion fleet was coming, he was a second year engineering, as far as the story goes, right? Second year engineering student, and then the thing is, they were all told to go home. War. All able-bodied men must report to their local units and everything. The thing is, he did. He traveled, and they were these flatbed trucks. There was flatbed trucks, no, flatbed train carts. So here's a piece of wood. Cover your head with it and everything. And the thing is, the Japanese attack came in, bang 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 bang, and he had to walk halfway back to his hometown because the rail station got attacked or something, or it got blown up by Japanese planes and everything. But the thing is, by the time he reached his hometown, the local unit was already dissolved, was already destroyed or something. So the best thing for him to do was to fall in with the guerrilla forces in the mountains, and that's what he did. But here's the thing, right? One of the most disturbing stories that I found about my grandfather, his brothers, his cousins, and his friends in his hometown is that after the war, they started hunting down collaborators and traitors. Like literally, pulling the you could just get my grandfather for this, and him and his friends and his cousins and brothers, whatever, that they started that the war was over. They declared Yamashita surrendered or whatever. The Japanese forces surrendered, but the thing is, anger was still there. And there were stories about my grandfather, his friends, and his cousins, his brothers, that they started going after collaborators or people who collaborated with the Japanese, like pulling people out of their homes and executing them for being Japanese collaborators in their backyards or something. In other words, here in the Philippines, a lot of things happen in backyards. Okay, so it's a thing, historically speaking, and it happens even now. A lot of things happens in backyard. You know what? Backyard at this point in time, only rich people have backyards here in the metro, and people who live in the provinces because the land is cheap there, so they could afford to have backyards.
They had. At their peak, these guerrilla fighters, meaning irregular fighters, civilians, and stranded soldiers waging a hit-and-run war, controlled around 60% of the country. And they kept accumulating more guns, including weapons taken from dead Japanese soldiers. Here's the crazy part. The Americans, while in exile, decided to...
It's like, one of my friends, his dad still owns a carbine. It's like the centerpiece of his collection from World War II or something. I know, because I held it, like, recently.
Filipinos. Under MacArthur, a secret U.S. operation ran submarines past the Japanese Navy, delivering rifles, ammunition, radios, and explosives straight to the Filipino guerrillas. All told, they smuggled in roughly 1,325 tons of supplies, which must have included a shit ton of guns and ammunition. And when General MacArthur returned as promised in late 1944, U.S. forces incorporated many of the roughly 250,000 Filipino guerrillas.
That's why, if you see the Philippine armed forces right now, there are still the 30-06, the Garands. Some parts or some elements of the Philippine armed forces still use some of these American supplies that were smuggled in
into their ranks and supply them with even more weapons as they pushed the Japanese out. Then, just like that, the war ended. And on July 4th, 1946, the U.S. granted the Philippines the independence he had promised and went home.
No, we weren't independent yet. We were, quote-unquote, what we'd call a protectorate or a commonwealth.
But it left
behind... We didn't have, like, our own thing until 1958 or 1953. because we were the Commonwealth, we followed U.S. laws, and then 58 or 53, I'm gonna have to check on my books because that's scam. I swear to God, it was in our history that Aguinaldo got scammed out of that money.
Flooded with loose wartime firearms, many of which remained in circulation after the fighting ended.
Yeah.
So the Philippine government did the only thing it could. It started registering them without any pre-qualification of applicants at all. No background checks, no screening, nothing. You just walked in with a gun, wrote your name down, and it was yours. And that was only the beginning, because remember, those two pipelines that we covered earlier never really shut off. Add in decades of legal imports, domestic gun manufacturing, and
they're like promising. And like, if you're a gun owner here in the Philippines, there was always this rumors that, you know what, just wait for an amnesty, just wait for an amnesty. If you like, own a piece that's quote unquote unregistered, which is automatic, which is like an automatic, which is illegal here, by the way. It's an automatic thing. There's always this floating rumor, just wait for the amnesty, just wait for the amnesty. It never happens. That amnesty has never came. I have been hearing that rumor for decades now that there will be a firearms amnesty, but no, that never happens.
And one insurgency after another, communist rebels, Muslim separatist fighters in the south.
We have communist rebels in the north and south because, they lend guns to each other. We have communist rebels. We still have Islamic rebels here. So, yeah, it's a thing.
And criminal gangs. And the number just kept climbing. So
not to mention, like, there's this new ongoing trend that the cults operating in the mountains in north, not only in the north, but also in the south, are coming down from the mountains and, establishing their own private kingdoms. You could literally Google that here. You could literally Google that. Some of these there was a cult recently. What they did was they went down from the mountains and they tried charging people tax. And there's even another group. And what they did is right now they tried to hold the checkpoint, or they tried to hold a toll gate that they would charge people for passing through the road or something.
That's how the Philippines went from a country.
Cults are a thing here in the Philippines, and armed and violent cults are a thing here in the Philippines.
With almost no ordinary person owned a gun to one with roughly 4 million.
And the thing is, it's actually quite, for people who live in the metro, it's actually quite funny in a sense because some of these cults actually go online and they go live through FB or through Facebook. And they spread their manifesto, I guess, or their religious doctrine that we own the country, or God is with us, whatever. And you can actually, if you go like dig hard enough, you will actually find it.
Guns in circulation today, and it happened almost by accident, one colonizer and one war at a time. But the real question is, what happens?
It's like the U.S. military literally made a conscious decision to literally smuggle in guns.
Once all that firepower is out in public, what kind of gun violence?
It's not out in public. Only uniformed personnel. We don't. Our comprehensive and firearms law or firearms act literally forbids us from open carrying these things. And the thing is, it's even considered for civilians to basically carry a firearm in a holster. So as not to be mistaken for police. That's why, we carry it in those, quick draw bags. Quick draw bags are popular here in the Philippines. So we carry it through that. That's why, if you see a guy with a fanny pack, literally in front, on top of his junk or his junk area, there's a big probability that there's a gun in it. Like, that the whole thing extends inside his pants so he could draw from it. I know because I own one. The thing is, it's not those guns. I wouldn't consider those guns to be out in public because uniformed personnel are the only ones who could carry guns here in the Philippines, in publicly. Like, if you go around, like, you can't do that. You will get arrested. Because here in the Philippines, right, apart from the firearm registration, you need to license yourself first before you can actually buy a firearm. And after that, there's another separate license. There's the LTOF, the PTC4, and the actual firearm registration. First, you get an LTOF, license to own and possess firearms. You get that one first, and then that's the time where you can actually own and or buy firearms. Next is after you buy a firearms from a store, you need the store will basically register that firearm for you, and that's the thing. After that, here's the thing, right? There's no problem. You can keep it at home, no problem. But before you could actually take it out of your house, you have to apply for another form of license called the PDC4, permit to carry outside of residence. Firearms outside, so PDC4, permit to carry firearms outside of residence. So that is the thing. For you to be carrying guns, you need at least one registration and two separate licenses for owning and for carrying it. It's not out in public. Only uniformed personnel are allowed to carry it in public. That's why these security guards, these guys, they need to be LESP holders, license to license to exercise security professions. To exercise security profession, everyone needs to be licensed. It's not that easy, all right? It's not the Wild West here. Although it is the Wild West in some parts, because some of these quote unquote armed groups do have uniforms. So yeah, there's that's why there are warnings and travel restrictions. So you know what, if you're planning to come here to the Philippines, check those places out. But you know what, if you're coming to popular tourist destinations, Boracay, Palawan, Siargao, Metro Manila, go for it. No problem. You'll probably see it. You're completely safe. But the moment you step out, in some of those restricted areas or those areas with warnings, there was a recent YouTuber or influencer. He went to one of those places, and well, unfortunately, he got unalive. He disappeared, and then it was found out that he was unalive. So yeah. I mean, we do have a history of tourists, particularly Americans being unalived, kidnapped for ransom is a thing here. So, yeah, and sad for that fact, it was back in the 90s that they were kidnapped from a well-known or popular tourist destination. So yeah, I don't know what to say about that, but yeah, go.
Does a country like this actually produce?
They were called, if I remember correctly, they were the Burnham spouses or the Burnham couples. Unfortunately, only one of them actually made it out during their rescue mission.
When it does, who's there to protect ordinary people? Because as we're about to find out, for most Filipinos, the answer was never the police.
Mm-hmm. It was never the police in a sense that that the martial law left a very sour note, at least to the public or to people's minds, because again the police and the military was wielded as a tool by the dictatorship to as a form of oppression. So as a former colonial country, we always look at the police and the military not as a protector. We don't look at them as protectors, but as a form of oppression. Because in the U.S., it's a completely political thing. But here in the Philippines, we have had a history of a dictatorship. We have had a real history of a dictatorship. Being a former colonial to several countries, the U.S., Japan, and Spain. We always saw the police and the military as a form or as a tool of oppression. We didn't see them as actual protectors. At least that's how it was explained to us during our history classes.
Since we've established that the Philippines today has over 4 million guns in circulation, one could reasonably assume that this must translate into a lot of gun deaths, right?
No.
Even I personally keep hearing how the Philippines supposedly has one of the highest firearm homicide rates in Southeast Asia, or how easy and cheap it is to hire hitmen there to have somebody killed. So let's actually look at...
It's not a thing in the sense that, yes, there are... I have no idea how to put this plainly, in the sense that, yes, we have the highest rate. Like, we have some of the highest crime rate here in Asia, but the whole gun death thing, it's sort of like, to me, of course, my evidence is completely anecdotal, and even my historical education is a bit spotty at this particular point in time. But the thing is, it sort of gets buried under the mountain of crap that goes on in the country. It's like I just watched this video of this woman killing her should really stop using that word for better algo. Unaliving her live-in partner, and she was literally, and there's this CCTV video of her kicking his corpse. Like papatay-patayan ka? Are you pretending to be dead? And she well kicking his corpse, but apparently she already killed him because she stabbed him with a knife, and then after she stabbed him, she thought that he was just pretending to be dead. Like, it's currently going viral locally right now. So I guess anecdotally speaking, it's just like a lot of things get buried under a mountain of crap.
At the numbers. According to the Philippine National Police, or PNP,
by the numbers,
there were 10,936 gun-related incidents between 2022 and early.
I honestly expected it to be higher. Not that bad.
2024, roughly 5,000 a year. But those aren't all deaths. That's every kind of gun incident out there.
There we go.
Shootings, threats, robberies, the whole range. When it comes to firearm homicides, the latest United Nations data shows that around 2,700 people were shot and killed in the Philippines in 2023.
I mean, it was during the drug war because you know what? This is the center. If you go north, you got communist rebel. If you go south, you got Islamic rebels. So, that was the joke back then. Pick your poison. You have a drug war in the middle. You have communist rebels on top, and then Islamic rebels down south, right over here. And you know what? And every feudalistic lord in between.
That's roughly 2.
Because the Burnham couple was kidnapped from Palawan, which was over here, and then they were brought somewhere over in this particular area, and they were dragged around for months. They were kidnapped by Islamic terrorists, and yeah. They're like one of the biggest, or back in the 90s, they had like they were the high profile. It was a high profile kidnapping. Tons of it. And then there was the Marawi siege back in 2017, which was right over here. Same area actually. Ironically speaking, if you go down here in this particular where the like button is, that's General Santos. Relatively peaceful. But somewhere here in the middle, and these little islands in Honolulu, Kidapawan. Yeah, no, government ain't in control. It's a ton of islands, you guys. We got like 7,100 something islands. 7,700 was 7,100. I can't remember. See, grade school stuff. I'm forgetting now. Are you smarter than a fifth grader? I probably would mess it up. But the thing is, right, this is the capital, is right over here. That's the capital. This is Manila Bay. I know that for a fact because I spent 2 weekends. I literally just came from there every weekend during the PSMS and the last gun show, the Philippine Scale Model Show and the gun show, and I came from the thing is, in the capital, you're completely safe, relatively safe. You're relatively safe, but the thing is, the moment you step off, the moment you step off, the whole thing changes. You're right. Government is having a hard time, dominating or exerting complete control over all of these islands.
3 firearm homicides for every 100,000 people. Is that high?
I honestly expected more.
Well, it depends on what you're comparing the rate against. By the government's own numbers, gun crime has actually been on a downward trend for years.
There we go.
And you can see that if you look at the rate of homicide by firearm from 2016, which was 7.9 per 100,000 people, more than triple the 2023 rate. And there's a clear explanation why 2016 was so high. That was the year that President Rodrigo Duterte launched his infamous war on drugs. Officially, the Philippine police themselves recorded around 6,000 people killed in the process of cleaning up the street.
I remember back in 2017, like a year after its declaration, there's this street. And I remember I don't go past by that. I don't pass by that. It's a well-known shortcut in East Avenue, in Quezon City. And the thing is, you know what? I never passed by that street again because I remember a year after the war, it was it's basically you have to go to a slum area, and I remember I counted at least 6 side by side funeral wakes on the street about people who got eliminated during the drug who got unalived during the drug war
and busting drug gangs. Human rights groups put the real number as high as 30,000 once you count the vigilante-style killings.
See, that's the whole thing. If I wasn't a VTuber, I honestly wouldn't talk openly about this stuff.
Admittedly, the numbers get messy here because there were arguments over whether drug suspects killed by police should count as homicides at all. Still, no one can deny that there were a lot of shootings and killings going on, and it was front-loaded. The campaign was at its bloodiest in 2016 and 2017.
There we go.
One likely reason the rate came down so much is that a lot of violence was drug and gang related. This actually hints at something important about the nature of gun violence in the Philippines. But let me come back to that, because it becomes a whole lot clearer the moment you compare the Philippines to the United States. You see, at first glance, the Philippines' latest gun homicide rate of 2.3
This is amazing. We're doing it by the numbers now.
Looks lower than that of the United States, where gun homicide sits at around 4.7 per 100,000.
So
but
almost
that
twice.
Might not be the most accurate way to analyze the situation, because the US has something like 120 guns for every 100
Estimated.
people. The Philippines has fewer than 4. So America has more than 30 times as many guns per person, but only about double the gun homicide rate. So if you look at it crudely on a per gun basis, a gun in the Philippines appears far more likely to be connected to a homicide than a gun in the United States. And what that tells you is that the nature of gun violence in the Philippines is very different. It's intentional. It's targeted. There are almost no random, accidental shootings, at least according to the data. So who actually...
You have to pay for that. If you want an intention... It's quite rare. Alright? Because, if you guys remember The Simpsons, right? There's this, Chief, Chief Wiggum's, eating a donut with his guns or something. But the thing is, guns are a premium here, alright? Of course, you will get stabbed, but the thing is, guns, in other words, guns cost extra.
Gets shot in the Philippines. Overwhelmingly, it's someone the shooter meant to kill. A business rival, someone on the other side of a dispute, whether that's over land or drugs.
It just dawned on me that at least my family, or we have had family friends that have been involved. We have friends in the family, we have family members, or distant or in close. I just realized it now, the ways that now that have been involved in shootings because of legitimate business, by the way. Legitimate business and or politics.
A witness, a journalist, a local politician.
There we go.
Local elections in
local businessmen actually.
Particular can be deadly. In the 2025 midterm elections, the country's own...
I remember one of my mom's closest friends, her husband. The reason that he can't go home. I wish we could pull that map up again, because they were located in Visayas. So there's the map. Of course, I can't point at it anymore. They were located in Visayas. I can't. The thing is, he killed. I should stop. I should really stop using that word. He unalived. He unalived a local politician. That's why he can't go. No charges have been brought up because, I don't know, mutual combat or something. Mutual combat or something. So anyways, they just can't go home. So that's why he's here in the metro. And the thing is, here's the thing, right? It was mutual combat and no one considers him as a murderer. So I'm not really sure how it works. But the thing is, it was mutual combat, it was a gun battle, and he killed a local politician. That's it.
Election Commission confirmed that just under 20 candidates were killed during the campaign.
See, not that bad.
And they called it an improvement.
That's why you know what? If you're watching from the US, you should watch out that, this whole thing, because there was the murder of Charlie Kirk, the Trump assassination. Trust me, you don't want this. You don't want this.
Because in the previous national election, the number was close to 100. The most extreme example is still one of the worst massacres in modern Philippine history.
There we go.
In 2009, in a province called Maguindanao, 58 people were ambushed and killed in a single afternoon. 32 of them were journalists, which to this day makes it the deadliest single attack on the...
It was the Maguindanao massacre. Basically, it was between the Ampatuans and what was that? The Anyways, Ampatuans were the ones who, I think, I honestly can't remember if the case is over, but the thing is, there were two in Maguindanao. There were like, if you check on the map, they're in the south. Okay, where's that stupid map? They're somewhere in the south, right? They're in the south. Anyways, what happened was, the story was, two rival families were vying for the political, leadership in this particular town. And the thing is, one that it was a big deal, right? It was a big deal in the sense that, the Ampatuans because here in the Philippines, tons of islands, politicians here rule, they rule like, like a feudal society. This particular, you could literally distinguish regions, and you could distinguish regions, provinces, cities by who rules them, because usually it's a political dynasty that rules them. Like even now, right? Our current president's father was the former dictator. Here, it's all about the political dynasty. So, they have their own quote-unquote baluartes, meaning their hometown or their home state, where their families rule. The Maguindanao massacre, the story behind it was, as far as I remember, is what the Apatuan was like the ruling family. And there was this up-and-coming family, I forgot the name of that particular family. Anyways, the thing is, that what happened was that that particular family finally declared, you know what, we are running for political leadership here in Maguindanao, and we are going to register for, we're going to register our, we're going to submit. We're now going to the local, Commission on Elections office in order to submit our bid for the mayoralty. The Ampatuans, the suspects, the ruling family. And what they did, right? What the particular family did, the Ampatuan rivals, what they did was they invite the journalists, because it was a big deal in this particular area. It was a big deal that, another family was rising up, or another group was rising up to challenge the current ruling family, the Ampatuans. It was a big deal. So a lot of journalists, came in that, let's cover this. This is historical. For this town, for this particular region, it's historical that, that another family or another group of politicians is, will be coming up to rival the Ampatuan. The Ampatuan, of course, couldn't take it. Instead of, fighting them in the elections, instead of, trying to out-campaign them in the elections, they just decided to unalive all of them. And the thing is, during that particular time, they had a convoy. The rival politician or the rival family, I'm pretty sure you can find this documentary in YouTube or something. But the thing is, the rival family had a convoy of journalists, and the Ampatuans, quote unquote, ambushed that laid out an ambush for that convoy, and here we are. Over 58 people were unalived in that ambush, and a ton of them were journalists.
Press anywhere in the world.
And I remember one of the Ampatuans, there was this clear picture of him, like one photo after they were arrested, after they were taken by the government. There was this one picture of him, one photojournalist slamming his camera on the guy's face.
Political assassination.
On purpose. There's this Japanese meme of this cameraman ramming his camera onto a guy's face. It was something like that.
One powerful clan to stop a rival from running for office.
From an rival from that office. See, they were trying to stop that family for basically submitting their bid for the local public office. But, instead of, trying to out-campaign them, might as well just, unalive them. Just so happens they were being followed by a convoy of journalists, because this was big news in that local area. Like I said, you guys, this is the third world, all right? The government, unlike in the US, the government isn't in complete control here.
And they didn't hire a couple of gunmen to do it. They used their own private army. So at this point, you could be asking, what the hell is the police doing? Fair question. In the Philippines, the government
they
has
simply
never
can't enforce it, right? Like, for example, here in the Philippines, if you go around strapped with a gun and the police, here in the metro, the police will stop you. Can we check out your PTC4? Can we check out your license for that? If you can't show up those documents, If you can't show those documents, you'll get arrested, you'll get charged for illegal possession, that's it. But if you go to these places where everyone is armed, they simply can't. They simply can't. Right? Are you honestly going to try and arrest a guy that belongs to one of these clans walking around with not only a pistol but with an actual M4 or Armalite and M16? Of course not.
Real monopoly on public protection, which we found surprising. How can that be, right? Turns out, under American rule, Filipinos inherited the basic building blocks of democracy like elections, Congress, voting rights. But that was before anyone had built a strong, professional, national bureaucracy to go with it.
Yeah.
So the people who won those...
I mean, that's the whole thing. That's why, democracy failed in Afghanistan. The local government failed in Afghanistan. Imagine like the Western expansion, right? How the West was won. We simply didn't have the infrastructure. They introduced democracy, but the thing is, we simply didn't have the infrastructure to back it up. Oh, my bad. Oh.
The early elections were the families who already had the money and the land, the provincial elites.
The provincial elites, like I said, the dynasties here.
Scientists call this cacique democracy. Cacique here meaning local chief or boss. Basically, democracy arrived before the state was ready for it, and from the very democratic founding of the nation, real power sat with a few dozen landowning families who captured the government from within. From the provinces to Metro Manila, a handful of elite families that own the mega malls, the banks, the media, the real estate hold the real power. And they arrange their own security to protect...
The Sobel, Ayalas, Lopez's, Chinese families are a new thing. The Gokong Ways, the Gotong Kos. That's a new thing.
Themselves, their people, and their property. So if that's how the most powerful families in the country operate, then everyone else has to do the exact same thing. The neighborhood pharmacy, a private school, a hospital, a car dealership, a gated community for middle-class families where homeowners pull their dues to pay for a guard at the gate. And that's exactly what led to the rise of the private security industry in the Philippines. At first, it was chaos because technically you could hire anyone as your private guard and just hand them a gun, as long as you got a permit from the mayor, likely through personal connections. In effect, there was no real line between a security guard and a hired gun or private army gun. You could literally have a criminal with a history of violence walking around armed and in uniform because there was no background check required. So in 1969, the government passed a private security agency law after being lobbied by the big security agency operators who wanted legitimacy. It required every guard to be licensed, vetted, and trained, and it put the whole industry under the control of the country's military force. And from that point on, the number of private guards exploded. In the first year, there were about 36,000 licensed guards.
Very robust security
Then came Marcos. In 1972, President Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law and turned the Philippines into a dictatorship for the next 14 years. And the private security industry only grew. His government issued decrees pushing guards into mining sites, logging camps, and plantations, all the places where valuable resources needed protecting. By 1984, the number of licensed guards had quadrupled to 145,000 from when the law first passed. From there, the industry just kept spreading. Through the 90s, it followed the malls, the banks, and the gated neighborhoods. Then in the 2000s came the call centers that also needed guards.
I remember one of our most Forbes Park, one of our most gated communities, Corinthian Gardens. Basically, you will see literally where the elites live, because I remember during the Oakwood Mutiny, we were passing by through one of our most famous highways, EDSA. And I remember, it was the Corinthian Gardens, one of those, where the elites live, the gated communities. I remember seeing the front of their gate, like the entrance to their community, it looked like a DMZ zone, barbed wire and everything. during the upheaval. No. It wasn't during the Oakwood Mutiny. It was during the May 1 riots, the Labor Day riots.
Add in
because the rich people, the elites were so afraid that it was the Labor Day riots that those poor people or those workers are coming after them. So they literally locked down their gated community with barbed wire and barbed wire, sandbags, and armed guards. Tammany said you could always hire like one half of the poor to kill the other one half. Unalive.
Of street crime and a real terrorism threat in the South, and demand never really let up. Today, the Philippines has over 600,000 licensed private security guards. Don't forget bounty hunting. That's more private guards out on the street than the Philippines has soldiers and police combined. Get this. The Philippines has about 228,000 police officers for a country of 115 million people.
Not enough.
That's roughly one cop for every 500 people. And that thin force is spread across more than 7,000 islands. So the Philippine National Police, or PNP, even has a name for the private guards. They call them force multipliers because across much of the country, these private guards are the closest thing to law enforcement around. In fact, it's the PNP that issues every...
But the problem is, it's the PNP that issues them their licenses, but the problem is they're privately hired, they're privately owned.
Private security license and supervises every single agency and guard in the country. And remember, for 6 years, the entire PNP force was consumed by a drug war that pulled it away from everyday policing. During the pandemic lockdowns, they even issued formal orders deputizing private guards to help secure establishments. But this isn't really a partnership. In many ways, it's the private sector subsidizing the police. Filipino businesses are paying for a 500,000 person security network out of their own pockets, and the state gets to use it for free. Because think about it, the guards are the PNP's eyes and ears. They watch.
What? It's a symbiotic relationship.
They report, they deter. It's the government quietly outsourcing its own job. Except, here's the limit.
It was irony of all ironies, because there was this time even before the drug war that they would outsource the guard duty. I don't think it's but there was a time. There was a time in the previous administrations that they would hire private security guards to serve as guards for Camp Crame, for police for basically police bases or police and military camps.
A security guard doesn't work for the public the way a police officer does. He works for whoever is paying, which is the client who hired the agency that employs him. So don't expect him to come running if you're getting mugged across the street.
There we go.
His authority doesn't extend beyond the edge of the property he's assigned to protect. And even if he did step in, legally he can only make a citizen's arrest, meaning he can detain someone until the police show up. And that's it. So who are the agencies that employ these guards? There are roughly 1,800 of them registered across the country. And you would think a market this size, over 500,000 guards, would be dominated by a few big players. But surprisingly, it's the opposite. The market is heavily fragmented, and based on our research, there's a reason for that.
There's like no monopoly. It's like a buyer's market in a sense that trying to basically buy up freshly retired police and military personnel.
It's the law. Under the current rules, a single agency cannot employ more than 2,000 guards, which kind of makes sense given the
you don't want to give one way too much power.
Historical context of private armies. It's the government's way of making sure no single company can ever assemble a private force big enough to become a threat itself. Anyway, let's say you want to hire one of these guards. What do you do?
Agency.
According to a 2026 government cost distribution for the Manila area, the monthly cost for just one day shift guard already comes out to around 45,000 pesos, or roughly $770 before the...
Note that, a security guard won't receive the entirety of this. It's like what? He'll only receive like roughly 60, 50%. If he's lucky, the rest would go to his agency.
agency as its own cut. And under the current law, the agency's administrative fee cannot be less than 20%.
There we go.
So obviously, agencies can charge more than the 20% minimum to increase their margins. So how much of that does the guard actually take home? Minimum wage. In 2026, that's around 8.
See, that's the whole point. He would be lucky if he gets like even 50%. Capitalism. Manifest destiny, baby.
18,000 pesos a month, or roughly 320 US dollars.
I don't know why I laughed when I found out that I was right. This is just sad. You have an armed guy walking around earning something like this, which is really bad.
To put that in perspective, one Filipino think tank, Iban, fee cannot be less than 20%. So obviously, agencies can charge more than the 20% minimum to increase their margins. So how much of that does the guard actually take home? Minimum wage. In 2026, that's around 18,000 pesos a month, or roughly 320 US dollars. To put that in perspective, one Filipino think tank, Iban Foundation, estimates family in Manila needs about 1279
Ibon means bird.
9 pesos a day to get by. That's roughly 33,000 pesos, or 590 US dollars per month. So
I never knew that Ibon Foundation was a think tank. But anyways.
So a guard on minimum wage is earning barely half of what it takes to support a family. Still, this is real full-time employment with overtime, holiday pay, and government health and pension contributions, at least on paper. The problem is that agencies are notorious for getting around it by churning guards from post to post and letting them go right before they would have to be made permanent. They often fail to pay the benefits the guard is legally owed. So let me ask you, for a job this low paying and thankless, who do you think actually applies? For a long time, a lot of
Unfortunately, a lot of them end up like, for those who didn't pass or for those who didn't get through the quota within the Philippine police or the military.
Them were ex-soldiers, men who left the military after the Marco dictatorship and needed work. But today, it's very different.
Looking for the historical
Some
context.
are people who studied to become police officers but couldn't make it. Others just need a job, any job. And private security is an entry-level job, often a stepping stone they hope to leave as quickly as possible. And this is something everyone notices, but nobody says out loud. So many of these guards look old and out of shape. You see a guy who looks like he's in his 50s with a belly and a shotgun and think, this man couldn't stop a teenager if he tried. But what do you expect? If the job is a low-paid stepping stone, the young and ambitious use it and move on. The ones who stay year after year are the ones who never found the way out. And here's the thing, to become a guard in the first place, you need a high school diploma, a clean police record, and you have to pass a drug test, a psychological evaluation, and a licensing course. That's it.
Based on on other industries, it's compared here on how hard it is. It's really not that bad. That's why a lot of people go for it.
The law does require guards to be physically and mentally fit, but there is no fitness test.
I remember when I observed one of the licensing course, because I observed a licensing course. There was this girl. She was trying to basically she was going through the licensing course, and the thing is they had to fail her because you need to fire an X amount of number of rounds with a pistol, with a small firearm, and you need to fire an X amount of rounds through a long firearm, and it could either be a shotgun or or a rifle. She passed with flying colors with a pistol. She was a decent shot with a she was a really good shot with a pistol, but the problem is when she got through the rifle, it was a shotgun actually. She had trouble lifting. She had trouble dealing with the weight of the shotgun. And in other words, she had trouble because her weak hand was her left hand, her right hand was braced, but the problem is she had trouble lifting the other end, the muzzle of the shotgun to the target, Because she didn't have the strength. It was real heavy. So the thing is, she didn't even manage to fire the required number of rounds for the simple reason that it was too dangerous to let her fire the gun because she couldn't. She literally didn't have the strength to point the muzzle of the rifle or the muzzle of the shotgun to the target. She couldn't lift it up. They had to fail her.
A medical certificate is enough, and under the newer law,
which is ironic because again, I keep going back to the story. My first major and my first sergeant was they were both ladies. They were both girls. So I wonder what happened there.
The old maximum age language was removed. Basically, nothing really measures whether you could actually contain a situation. Because in the security industry, it's all about
minimum age. It's here's the thing, right? He was talking about the numbers. I remember running into one of them. I went through this I went through this refresher course for my first responder course, and one of them was from let's just call him a cop. And the thing is, it's sir, you should re-up. You should re-sign up. You should get your commission. And I told him, dude, I am no longer, I am too old. Oh, don't worry, we'll get you a waiver. We'll get you an age waiver. It was the way he was telling. It's the way he was dude, are you really that desperate for it? You, sir, you should re-up. You should re-up. You should, get your commission and everything. No, I'm too old. No, it's alright. We'll get you a waiver. We can do it tomorrow. It was a Sunday. We could go to the office tomorrow and get you signed up. But no, I'm sorry, but no, too old, too tired, too jaded. Anyway,
any physical body in a uniform with a gun, no matter how out of shape, was supposed to be enough to make most troublemakers think twice.
Yep.
And for decades, that logic held. But in June of 2026, a very different kind of threat broke every assumption this entire system is.
Ironic, guys. If you check out the YouTube videos floating around online, those two kids, they got caught by a fireman. The guy wearing the orange camouflage, he got taken down by a fireman. Yeah, they even armed the fireman here.
Built on, and it might change the private security industry forever.
Forever. The unguardable. The children.
Hopefully by now.
During my time when I decided to serve as government, I was assigned to a branch to I was assigned to this judicially. See, that's the whole point. I don't know. Here's the thing, right? One of the biggest reasons is that I can talk about my experiences. One of the reasons why I'm I turned into VTubing is so I can talk about my experiences without fear of repercussion. But despite that, I am still afraid. Okay. During my time when I served, I went through with this judicial unit. That's I'm trying to basically make a reference to the special victims unit, and the thing is the unguardable, right? Unguardable referring to children, and the thing is we were the special. In other words, we worked to a group law and order special victims unit. I worked for a somewhat similar agency like that, and or a similar division like that. The thing is, it was then that I found out that wow, we must really, based on the things I saw during that particular time. It was it was a long time ago. It was a lifetime ago. It was pre-pandemic. During my time there, when I this stuff I saw and the things I encountered, the world must must really hate children. I remember one of our certification courses. There was this at the end of the, apart from that, right? Apart from the things I saw during my time with that unit, I in 2015 was the end of it was the end of the millennium, the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, and we went through that. And of course, the UN declared that it was a thing, right? The 2015, the UN it declared that it achieved its Millennium Development Goals, and number two and four of the Millennium Development Goals, they had 15 goals or something, and number two and four was the reduction of child infant mortality rate for true birth, and number 4 was literacy. And the thing is, during that particular time, it only needed like $80 billion. The program only needed like $80 billion to be successful. I am honestly just based on my research and based on what I've read, it only needed like $80 billion. But from the span of 2000 to 2015, the world exceeded like $3.5 trillion in weapons and military spending. In other words, apart from my time in that unit and apart from what I saw in that research, under that particular, while studying that particular subject, the world would rather spend money on guns, weapons and ammunition that it would for the other than the lives and the future of our children. And not to mention the things I saw, the thing when I was in that unit. So yeah.
Picture of what gun violence in the Philippines actually looks like. Private guards holding guns are everywhere in public, which is supposed to deter a lot of everyday petty street crime. The firearm homicide rate is fairly low, around 2 per 100,000, and most of it is targeted, aimed at a specific person over a specific dispute, whether that be political, money, or a score to settle. Another way of saying that is the kind of random, indiscriminate mass shooting you see in the United States almost never happens in the Philippines.
Happens here.
So what the hell happened on...
Because here, bullets come at a premium. I mean, you will get stabbed. But the thing is, bullets come at a price.
June 22nd, 2026. Around 9 in the morning at San Jose National High School in Tacloban City, a school of nearly 2,000 students, 2 ninth graders walked in and opened fire. Witnesses said one of them started shooting through a classroom window before walking inside. They fired roughly 40 rounds, and when it was over, 3 students were dead and around 20 more were injured. The death toll could have been...
It could have been worse. Death toll could have been worse. Only 3 after firing 44 rounds. Could have been worse.
Far worse, if not for the police who reached the school in about 2 minutes. As one of the boys tried to run...
That's not the police! He is not a police officer! He is a fireman! See, the orange camouflage, because this became a meme, like, what kind of, whatchamacallit, what are you hiding from with this type of camouflage? No, these are firemen. Orange is BFP, Bureau of Fire Protection. They're not there to camouflage. Here's the thing, right? Our forces, or our police and military forces, are so stretched thin that we had to arm our firemen. So this guy isn't a police officer; he's a fireman.
Students, teachers, and parents tackled him and held him down.
There's a meme right now going around because people were surprised. Like, what are you hiding from with this type of camouflage? No, that's because he's not hiding from anything. He's a fireman. He's not a police officer. He's not a soldier. He's a fireman.
The other fled, but later turned himself in due to pressure from his neighbors. Now, both shooters are alive and in custody, but here's a problem. Because they're only 14 and 15, they're treated as juveniles, which means that the case against them plays out mostly in private, and the 14-year-old cannot even be put on trial. So while there's been plenty of public investigation into how this thing happened, the one thing we may never fully get is a clear answer from the shooters themselves on why they did it. At first, police said it looked like a grudge over bullying. Both boys had reportedly been bullied for years, so it could have been a targeted attack. But investigators and even the education secretary later walked that back, saying that the bullying claim was unverified, and that the 3 students who died may not even have been the intended targets. Then a Senate investigation pointed somewhere else entirely.
Everyone clowned on the Senate investigation because this particular senator literally called in a German developer all the way from Europe because they were blaming video games, Gorebox, I think, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember it correctly.
Which I'll get into later. For now, here's what we do know, and there are 2 factors that could explain how this thing ever happened. First, the physical firewall was breached. The 14-year-old used a 9mm Glock pistol that belonged to his aunt, a police officer. Now, police rules say an officer's service weapon has to be kept in a proper safety vault. But according to her own testimony to the Senate, hers wasn't. She kept it in a gun box tucked inside a plastic locker in her house.
Everyone was clowning on that particular senator because whatchamacallit, she literally tried to summon the German developer of Gorebox before this particular police officer was summoned. So I don't know.
And on the day of the shooting, the 14-year-old broke in through a window, forced open that locker, and took the pistol. She never thought to lock it in a real vault because she lived alone and because it never crossed her mind that her nephew was capable of doing something like this.
There we go.
In fact, he had told her that he wanted to be a police officer someday, just like her. She'd even take him to a firing range once because of it. After the shooting, she was relieved from duty and criminally charged. The 15-year-old's gun tells even a messier story. It was a .38 revolver, and its serial number traced back to a private security agency in Cebu City, about 100 miles away from the crime scene, on another island. So how did that gun travel 100 miles to a different island? And
I remember talking to some of their registration agents, and while I'm in line at Camp Crame. And the thing is, one of their biggest problems was that, fine, you've got guards, and you would issue them, their guns, but the problem is a lot of these guards, they go AWOL. And the thing is, when they leave, these guards would go AWOL and they would take the guns with them. So a lot of these agencies are forced to basically report the guns, their registered guns as missing. And these guards, remember, these guys who earn quote-unquote minimum wage, basically, in other words, the trend is they earn minimum wage, and then, they go AWOL. And the problem is they take the agency's gun with them.
End up with a 15-year-old? That's still being investigated, but one confirmed link is this. Turns out, the boy's grandfather used to work as a security guard for that very agency. And here's where it gets strange. When police ran the serial number, they found the second nearly identical revolver carrying the exact same serial number still assigned to a guard in another province. You see where I'm going with this? Why did a former guard still have a firearm registered to the agency when a guard's gun is supposed to be returned when he leaves?
There we go. They don't return it.
And why is there a second identical gun with the same serial number?
There's two levels to this. Number one, the agency didn't report it as missing because you have to you have to go through the paperwork. There might be penalties. I don't know. But the thing is, what they did was, instead of just reporting it as missing, they quote unquote procured another gun, and here, register it as another one. In other words, there was a corruption in the agency, and probably the guard or the grandfather went AWOL with his assigned gun.
Floating around in a different province. Either way, the trail leads straight back to the
we line up with them.
And the agency now faces losing its license to operate for failing to report that one of its firearms had gone missing in the first place. So this is the first breach, the physical firewall at the institutional level. The guns used in the shooting weren't bought illegally from some stranger. They came from family members inside the police force and the private security industry, the exact people who should have been trained on the basics of how to properly store a gun. Now you understand why I had to break down the private security industry earlier, right? The low pay, the lack of any real training, guns that aren't even properly tracked or collected. When an entire industry is built on cheap, disposable, undertrained labor, you could argue it was only a matter of time for this kind of tragedy. But that's only half the equation, and that brings us to the second firewall, the one that was supposed to catch these two shooters long before they ever get their hands on a weapon. Culture. In the Philippines, there's a very well-known cultural concept called hiya. It roughly means shame or the deep fear of embarrassment. A Filipino criminologist named Raymond Narag argues that hiya works as a brake on this kind of violence, because in the Philippines, what you do doesn't just reflect on you, it reflects on your entire family community. Tied to that is how tight-knit Filipino families and communities tend to be. Narag's point is that when someone is struggling, spiraling, becoming dangerous, the people around them usually notice and pull them back in before it gets to that stage. He contrasts it with the US, where a troubled person can
Isolation.
isolate themselves completely and nobody intervenes. At a deeper level, though, if you extrapolate this concept of hiya out, it ultimately comes down to the collectivist nature of Filipino society. You always belong to something before you belong to yourself.
Yep.
Your family, your relatives, your local neighborhood, your community. It's a society where it's genuinely hard to become an isolated, invisible individual.
Oh, we asked this question before. Like, how come there are no, serial killers? Serial killers aren't a thing here in Southeast Asia because, one of the things has been because of. I have two theories, or at least, anecdotal theories about that. Number one is because, you belong to the collective. No one's, ever truly alone. Like despite the fact that I lived alone for a certain point in time, there are people who will check on me. There are people who showed up to basically just check on me, whether it be friends or parents. Like, and the thing is, when I think about it, I check on people, I check in on friends, and they live alone. And some of these men live alone, and I check in on them. And just as the way they check in on me. So yeah, either that or there's a severe underreporting of serial killers here in the Philippines or something.
And I mean that physically as well. The poorer you are, the more true this gets. In a crammed household, you almost certainly share a room, sometimes even a bed, with your siblings. And the 14-year-old came from exactly that kind of household. His family was on government welfare, his parents out of work. So you don't get the kind of privacy, self-contained bedroom a suburban American teenager takes for granted. Whether you like it or not, you're physically surrounded by people all the time, and that constant proximity was supposed to be the second firewall. But here's what changed. The smartphone. For example, if you had...
Like, he's talking about firewalls, this break in the matrix or something. I like it. I don't know how far his research goes. I like it, but I honestly like it. The way he describes it as a firewall. I guess a psychological or mental before a psychological. He's describing this welfare, psychological welfare as as firewalls. I like it.
To share one desktop computer with all your siblings, it's kind of hard to go looking up stuff online without anyone noticing. But with a smartphone, an introverted Filipino kid can completely disappear into his own world while he's physically surrounded by family and relatives. And that's exactly what investigators found when they looked into the 14-year-old who...
If some of these group chats get leaked, a lot of people are going... I know for a fact that some of these people are in group chats, and I know for a fact that they are going to jail if the group chat gets leaked.
By the way, did most of the shooting himself. According to a Senate investigation, the 14-year-old had been pulled into an online extremist network called 764. It's a nihilistic online group founded by an American teenager in Texas that the FBI now calls a national security threat. Its whole method is to hunt for exactly the kind of kid we've been describing. Lonely, withdrawn, not feeling like he belongs anywhere in real life. They find victims inside chat apps like Discord.
To be honest, I guess that's one of the upsides that that being a 90s kid. It's because I'm sorry because you know what? I always belonged in teams. I always belonged in a team. I always belonged to a group. Like, people would check in on me and I would check in on people. Like, dude, what's up? Where are you? Like, I check in on people. Like, so I guess we are looking at something completely different or something completely new. To the next generation, and this is something we should at least be careful about, because to be honest, I don't know. That was my childhood. Even now, like, I always belonged to a community. If not, I formed the community around me, or the community forms around me, or something. But you know what, guys? Again, I'm not really sure about the internet, but one of the reasons I liked about tabletop, that's why like big part of our what you call it, it's like a huge part of our content has always been tabletop is because of the community. And I remember there's a certain point, that's why I can't do video games, in a sense that um I just don't feel it there. Like, yeah, I play with other guys, but if you guys noticed, unlike other VTubers, I don't collab because I don't know how. I don't know how to collab online. I don't even know, I was never part of that generation of it, or that internet generation, in a sense that yes, I know how to work the internet. Yes, I'm a VTuber right now. Yes, I sort of quote unquote design my own model and everything, but I was never really truly part of this generation. That's why I play with tabletop with old. I play what the tabletop from Warhammer to what you call it bolt action with other older men, or with other older dudes, because we were not part of this. But the thing is, this could be a completely different animal where you could face isolation, because as a '90s kid, even though I believe myself to be an extrovert, and I believe myself to be an introvert. But for some reason, me being part of the community, people checking me on me, and me reciprocating it. You know what? I need to check in on that guy. I really need to call that guy right now. I haven't talked to him for quite some time. Wonder how he's doing. He's living alone and stuff. So I call him. Anyways, always had friends, always part of the group, always part of the collective. But here, for some reason, there has to be a distinction, in a sense that even though, yes, you are part of the same group chat or something, and is there like a difference having quote unquote internet friends to, having real life friends? People whose houses you actually go to, people you share rides with and stuff like that. Because I knew the distinction between high school and college, right? It's like in high school, holy crap. Those some of these people aren't really my friends, for the simple reason that the only reason I consider these people my friends is because we were stuck in a room together. But now I honestly see people on the regular, and guess what? We're not stuck in a room together. I honestly want to see these people, because the thing is, I've known people, and you know what? It's fine with me that I never see these some of these people again. We only considered each other as friends because we were stuck in that room and we weren't allowed to go outside during the school day. But now, I actually, as an older man, as someone who went through college, I honestly have, people I want to see on like a weekly basis, because we have fun together. We play tabletop, stuff like that. But this is a completely different animal.
And popular video games like Minecraft and Gorebox, which the
Gorebox.
14-year-old played heavily. Gorebox has since been banned in the Philippines after the shooting. The point is, this network offered him the belonging he was missing and then slowly pulled him toward darker and darker things. Self-harm, blackmail, hurting others, violence. And investigators found that after the shooting, an account believed to belong to an adult groomer left a message on the boy's page, telling him to delete his app so that there would be no evidence. And sure enough, when investigators went looking, that account was already gone. So what's clear now is that even a cultural firewall this strong, the shame, the families, the whole community watching, can no longer fully protect the Filipino kid from being radicalized by an online
There's like an what he's saying is that there's an avenue for these children to basically fall through the cracks. And yeah, completely different animal. This is completely new. Because I consider myself to be an introvert. That's why ergo VTuber. But the thing is, I have people who check in on me, and I know for a fact that here's the thing, right? I am a person who considers, dealing with psychologically speaking, dealing with self harm and stuff like that. But the thing is, I guess one of the biggest reasons why I haven't acted to some of my darker thoughts is because I am part of the collective. That my actions will harm, despite the fact that whether right or wrong, I know for a fact that if I do something, I wouldn't. I know. Here's the thing, right? Personally, I don't mind harming myself, but I think twice before doing anything that might harm the collective. But the thing is, thanks to this brand new thing, I guess they're falling through the cracks, and If they don't belong to the collective, that means they believe that they belong to this particular collective, which is bad. Because here's the thing, right? Personally, I wouldn't, think twice about harming myself, but I do stop when it comes to basically, doing anything that might, bring harm to the collective. The family, the friends. So I usually stop there and keep it all in my head.
Half a world away. The bottom line is, it's hard to say if this was truly a random mass shooting or targeted violence that caught bystanders in the crossfire. It could very well have been the bullying, or it could have been the copycat of the American school shootings inspired by Columbine, judging by the t-shirt that the 14-year-old was wearing. That being said, there is now a preponderance of evidence pointing to how well this was planned. Investigators found they had been preparing this for over a month, and they had even studied the relevant juvenile law. Under the Juvenile Justice and Welfare Act,
they prepared their stuff.
Child over 15 but under 18 can be charged and held criminally.
The problem is, they weren't exactly lawyers, so yeah, they're in trouble now.
Liable, but he doesn't go to an adult prison. He goes to a youth facility instead. The 14-year-old cannot even be charged with anything. So whether or not he was influenced or coerced by 764, the 14-year-old knew for sure that the worst he would face is a rehab program. So what does this mean going forward now that we know these two firewalls, the physical...
Not really. I mean, the problem is that, they literally read the law, but they didn't, like I said, they weren't exactly lawyers. The thing is, even if you even if you go to a diversion program or whatever, yes, you will go to a juvenile facility, but the thing is, you will continue your you're still going to one of those penal colonies, all right? The 7,700 islands, you're going to a penal colony.
And the cultural might not be enough to stop the next one. More guards. That's what the Department of Education is saying. They admitted there are only around 2,000 security guards for 48,000 public schools in the country.
I remember during my time, during with that unit, one of the cases that landed in our laps, I remember seeing the CCTV videos. It's like, we have security guards in these schools, and I remember looking at the guard, and it's like, how could you let that guy in? The victim was like 18 years old. Guy comes in, said he was going to talk to the principal. Really? I mean, of course, then again, this was one of those schools located in the slum areas. The victim was a 13-year-old. Victim was a 13-year-old. It was a 13-year-old. And the thing is, I remember looking at the feeds. I remember during the investigative phase that how could you let that guy in? Looking like that he was going to talk to the principal, and the thing is, the crime happened inside the school. So yeah, this might not be the answer. Like I said, minimum wage protecting the children. When minimum wage protecting the children, 7,700 something islands. I don't think so.
7 out of 10 public schools without dedicated security personnel. In fact, there was a guard at San Jose National High School on the day of the shooting, and that was 1 for 2,000 students. That sounds like a massive market gap just waiting to be filled by the security agencies, which might be great for the future of the industry. Maybe more hiring. But here's a real question. Who pays for it? Because remember, these are private guards funded by private clients like malls and banks. A public school isn't a revenue-generating business.
No, it's
so
not.
The education secretary is now asking the government for money to hire more. It's just a request, so let's see what actually comes of it. But bear in mind, this is the same government that cannot even properly fund its own national police force. The same PNP that leans on the entire private security industry to be its eyes and ears for free. This is the first problem. Funding allocation for more private guards at public school. For the sake of argument, let's say the private security industry does find a way to put more guards in schools. Then you run into the second problem, the one we already talked about. These are middle-aged, out of shape, minimum wage workers with almost no real training on how to store guns away, let alone properly use one in the first place. That might be enough for everyday deterrence, scaring of a snatcher or a shoplifter. But do you really think a guard like that can stop intentional
we
shooters
know that. They know that. We know that. But hey.
And for months? The entire 500,000 person security industry in the Philippines is built on one idea: deterrence. And that idea might fall apart the moment a threat like the one we just saw emerges. Maybe the real lesson here is that these two firewalls shouldn't be dismissed as outdated. They just need an upgrade. The private security industry will only keep growing, and
but nah, capitalism, I doubt it.
The unique Filipino culture is still there. Both just need to be strengthened to face the threats of the future. Maybe it means finally settling the current debate over whether the age of criminal responsibility, which is currently 15, should be lowered. And maybe most of all, it's about those same parents, relatives, and neighbors giving those lonely, withdrawn kids enough attention and belonging at home, they never go looking for it in the wrong places online. If those things happen, then honestly, it's hard to see the Philippines turning into America. If the security industry, the government...
I know, Nick, most of you guys don't have access to the local news cycle, but we're getting there.
The schools and the parents can all play their part, the same way those teachers, parents, and students did when they tackled and held down an armed shooter. Then maybe a tragedy that claimed the lives of 3 innocent children can stay the rare exception and never becomes the new normal. If you found this video insightful and feel better informed as a result, make sure to subscribe to Asian Boss, hit that notification bell, and share this video with your family and friends.
Like it if you do!
Our mission is to be your authentic go-to source for Asian-related insights across business, tech, and culture.
Yeah, actually, I honestly like it. He had a very insightful, like the way he juxtaposed the firewall to, protecting to the collective and to the psyche.
And we'll continue to bring you the most in-depth, objective reporting straight from the ground. We're not professional journalists, okay? All we do is ask questions to try to get to the bottom of an issue and do a shit ton of research to back up our findings. What we would love to do is show you how we discover and gather insights by bringing on our viewers with local knowledge, interviewing them live, and fact-checking in real time. That's why we do our live stream sessions, to invite our viewers and ask them for their local insights. If you're interested in participating and having your voice heard, just fill out the form in the description, submit a short video intro of yourself, and tell us what kind of insights you can share from the Philippines that the Western mainstream media doesn't cover. I'll personally review everything. I wonder if they did that in Vtubers, but I doubt it. And get in touch to see if you can...
It's not like, it's not like this whole thing screams of credibility.
Come on a future.
Guys, again, I'm getting legal knowledge, just to let you know, right? Taking legal advice or getting any knowledge from a VTuber is inadvisable. Alright?
A live stream session. Think of it like letting the audience see.
There's a reason why we're playing, like, Rogue Trader after this.
How we do our street interviews, but in real time with no edits. Then we'll follow those insights into our future Philippines-related episodes. If you think that sounds pretty cool, I totally agree. Let's get you in front of our audience to share your perspective and shape our next episode. This is how serious we are about building a truly authentic media platform that can challenge mainstream media, and I hope you'll be a part of it. Anyway, I'm Stephen Park. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and as always, stay curious.
Quite good. Like and subscribe, you guys. Bye! Hold on. Alright, what is next? We have like a ton of stuff to get through, you guys, but here's the thing. Right, like as for... see, we have a ton of stuff. We're gonna be painting this Friday because, I have to do stuff. The problem is we are out of time. Wait, we are out of time. Okay. Yeah. Anyways, you guys, that's all the time we have for tonight. We're gonna have to set up, the other ones for another day. We're painting this Friday and then going back again this Sunday. I'll see you guys on Friday. Alright, we're painting and listening again to basically Warhammer stories. See you guys, okay? Like it if you do, subscribe. Bye.